Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hear Our Story. Our guest today is someone who grew up right here in our community and has been a lifelong member of the Ramallah American Club. His roots run deep. His father was a charter member and club president. His mother served as ladies' auxiliary president, and he himself became one of the youngest presidents in club history. Long before social media and Google, our guest always had his finger on the pulse of what was needed in our club and community. Today, he'll take us back through those years and share his vision for the future of the Ramallah American Club. We welcome Mr. Sandy Bateh to hear our story. Welcome to Hear Our Story, the podcast where first-generation Palestinian voices take center stage. I'm Elias.
And I'm Janice Farhat.
Together, we're sitting down with family, friends, aunts, uncles, and yes, all your cousins too, so we can share the rich, complex stories of growing up between two worlds, the land that gave us life and the one that lives forever in our hearts.
They are not just our stories. They're stories that will feel familiar, maybe even like your own. So grab some coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into these conversations that are as enlightening as they are entertaining. Sandy, welcome. And before we begin, we want to thank you and Shireen for your hospitality. We are actually recording this podcast at your home and in your library. And if there's a particular reason for that, we will get to that in just a moment.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. As we always do, we'd like to ask you to please give us your parents' names, your grandparents' names, your hamula, and the story of how they came to the States. Please.
Absolutely. My father is Isa Kastandi Bateh. My father's parents were Kastandi Yusuf Bateh, and my grandmother on my father's side was Naama Farhat Bateh. On my mother's side, my mother's name is Abla Farhat Bateh. Her father is Hanna Ziyada Farhat, and my grandmother on my mother's side is Sara Jabed Farhat. Both sides are from Dar Ibrahim.
And what stories did your parents share about those early years? What did you remember most about your father and mother from their childhood and from your childhood?
Well, my father came in 1946, and he was 16 years old. He was studying in Jerusalem in boarding school and left right before he became 16 years old. At that time, the rule was that if you didn't leave the country before you're 16 years old, you'd lose your American citizenship, because he was an American citizen due to my grandfather being here back in the 30s. So he came over in 46. My mom came in 1952. There's a lot of funny stories that my father shared with us when they came here. They landed in New York. He hadn't seen his father in years because my grandfather was already here. They landed in New York City. He came with his brother Jimmy and my uncle Jimmy. And they landed in New York, and then they were sent down to Jacksonville. And the first thing they did, of course, back then, when they came and met the family, was go and become a peddler, sell door to door, as most of the others did. It's funny because they all lived on 8th and Main, and that store on 8th and Main, we used to just call it the Main Street, was an institution. And my grandfather and all his kids lived in the back of the store, and they would wake up and they would work in the store. And they were telling us, one of the funny stories is my dad told us, they would work constant. It was 7 days a week. It was all hours of the day and night. And one of the interesting stories he mentioned was, at one time my grandfather said, look, I'm going to give you some time off to go watch a boxing fight, over a cousin's house who had a TV. They didn't have a TV. And they went there, and unfortunately, it was a knockout in one round. So my grandfather said, okay, yeah, let's go back to the store, reopen it, start up again.
It was over in what, 5 minutes?
It was over in 5 minutes. It was Jersey Joe Wilcox versus somebody. I meant to look it up one time to actually check that. But my mother came in 52, and she originally went to Princeton, New Jersey, and lived with her uncle, her first cousin, Farhat. He had a professor, Farhat. He had who was teaching at Princeton at the time. She stayed there for a few years and then moved to Jacksonville. My parents got married in 1952. So my dad was actually here before any of the problems in the old country, before the state of Israel was created. And my mom came in 52, saw a little of what was going on there before she left. But they married in 52. And, our childhood was one of constantly being around your relatives. I mean, we knew nothing different than always being with your first cousins, my grandparents. We all lived within a 6-block radius of each other on the north side. So my grandparents lived there on both sides, around Pearl Street and Springfield Boulevard, went to school in the local schools. And our life was just being with your cousins, always. We had outside friends, but the majority of the time it was just being with your cousins. And that's the way we grew up.
Wow. Thank you. Uncle Sandy, Janice mentioned your deep roots in this community, and you just mentioned some as well. Could you tell us about your first memories at the Ramallah Club? Was it still on Atlantic Boulevard?
It was. We went there as kids. It wasn't really an option, and we liked to go. So it wasn't like, hey, this weekend we're free, let's go to the beach. It was, we're going to the club. And whether it was there for, a picnic or they were just having a club meeting, you would go to the club. And for us, it was just an extension if we're playing outside or if we're going to play at the club. So as kids, we would, the men would have the meeting room. You were not allowed in the men's meeting unless you snuck in and wanted to listen. The men had their card room and they played backgammon. And we just played ping pong. We would play ping pong and then we would be outside and play together there. And really, we kept ourselves busy just being around the cousins. We didn't have basketball courts and tennis courts and things like that. We were lucky if they cut the grass at the club on occasion at a swing set, but it was just being around family, and family was everything. That was the key. And we didn't miss anything. We weren't, it's not like we wanted to be anywhere else.
Awesome.
No, that's wonderful. You never felt like there was any sort of deprivation or anything like that?
No, we never felt that we missed out on not going to because if there were birthday parties or there were events that were happening, it was with your cousins. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like, you were going to somebody outside your cousin's event.
Yes.
All the events were with the club.
So you speak a lot about growing up with all of your cousins and all around pretty much the same age. And we've asked others, first generation, if there was ever a struggle between the two cultures. And I've spoken to Alex about this, about being American and Arab. And I've always gotten the sense from you, Sandy, that there was never a struggle, that you were always very proud of your identity and that you had no issue ever telling anyone about you being an Arab. You've always been a very proud Arab American. Am I right?
Yes. And I'm not,
no doubt.
It's not, I've never thought twice about it. In fact, before we started, I was showing some of the pictures and, in high school, I was the editor of the yearbook and one of the pictures, and it wasn't a big thing back then. To me, it was just normal. I wanted to have a picture of myself wearing my Palestine t-shirt, with my hat I wore. And to our friends, it was no different. They knew how we grew up. They knew us. They knew our culture. They were always around us. So they didn't think anything different of it. But I never had that feeling where there was a conflict. And maybe it's because the majority of our cousins, since we lived in the same neighborhood, were together. Mm-hmm. So I never went to junior high school or high school without, at least a half dozen relatives also going with me. So, we were always together. They knew who we were. We weren't outsiders.
Right.
Even when busing happened here in the late 60s and 70s when I went to school and got bused away from a local elementary school, it was not an issue. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that's what made the difference? Because that's the follow-up question. Do you feel it's because you were surrounded by that support, the cousins, the identity? You always felt like family was always around you. So you felt that strength and comfort of knowing somebody had my back.
Well, it did. And the other thing, it put a lot of pressure on us too, because you have to realize that because your cousins, brothers and sisters were in the same school before you, and thank God, our community excels in education, and that was important to the family.
Sure.
So if you take, for instance, my oldest sister, she graduated as valedictorian of Andrew Jackson. Well, 6 years later, I'm going through the same classes, and the teachers are the same teachers, and they expected, oh, you're so-and-so's brother.
Yeah.
We expect you to make A's. Oh, you're so-and-so's cousin. And it was unfortunate that we didn't have any that, flunked, because then we would have an excuse to say, well, I'm just performing up to so-and-so's level.
Yes.
So it was always that pressure. When you went in class, they would say, oh, okay, here comes another Bateh.
Yeah.
Here comes another Bateh.
Yeah.
And it was a lot, but it was fun.
Yeah. The academic excellence. I mean, to this day. Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure.
It's absolutely.
Culturally. Yes.
They recognized that. They knew we were hard workers.
Mm-hmm.
They knew we took it serious because they knew we were going to a higher level.
Yes.
Andrew Jackson at the time when I went to school, and Kirby Smith didn't have a lot of graduates that would go to college. Right. It was starting to become, not the highest level place where you can get a good education, but we did, and they knew we were in advanced courses, and they expected that to continue with whoever came next. So I was actually the last Bateh to graduate from Jackson, and I think it started. I wrote an article in the school newspaper back then, and started in 1947. That was continuous. There was a Bateh that was going through the school system at Kirby and Jackson all throughout, and I was the last one in 1978.
So from 1941, you said?
1947, I believe
47
it was.
until 78. That's remarkable.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Speaking of your academic excellence, we just got a tour of your amazing library and your beautiful home as well.
Incredible.
Absolutely incredible. We're both, Janice and I are both book nerds, and it felt like home. It was incredible. Absolutely incredible. Could you talk about this collection and how it all started, and if there are any works in there that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, I think it started with my love for Arabic music. At an early age, I was notorious for always wanting to sit next to the musicians when they were performing at the old Ramallah Club on Atlantic Avenue. And I was, 8, 9, 10 years old. And I would come home and beat on pots and pans and demand I wanted to get a tabla. And I remember I asked my sister's in-law, when she went back to Jerusalem, back probably in early 70s, if she would bring me, actually it was, early 70s, to bring me back a tabla. And she brought me back the steel tabla. And that's what really started me. And then I wanted to get a deeper appreciation of, what they were saying, where this music came from, what are the instruments? And I started really that way and wanted to get immersed in the culture. So it started with the music, following the musicians. At that point, I was started collecting records and anything I could get my hands on. So really that interest started with that, and then it expanded out to pretty much the entire Arab-Israeli conflict. So it wasn't just around the Palestinian issue, but it was the greater thing.
Very nice. Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible. I mean, the library collection holds history, books, music, sports, culture.
It's incredible.
I mean, and
it's
that's
honestly incredible.
And we forgot about the cookbooks, the extensive cookbooks. Can you talk about that real quick before we head into the next subject?
Yeah, tabikh is always important. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, so what I view the cookbooks, and it's not only the popular cookbooks that are out there, Mediterranean cooking or Mediterranean diet, but I tend to focus on the ones that, especially on Palestine, but the region as a whole, because the influence of whether it's Moroccan or Syrian or Lebanese and the different takes on the food. And a lot of the good cookbooks have stories behind them. So they're either written by people, refugees, or scholars who go deep in terms of the understanding how these recipes came about. I mean, why is it that it was heavily grain, or why was it that it's have vegetable in this region and stuff? Why is there a lot of meatless dishes, or why is it only lamb? Things like that. So I think of that as, you have to understand history of your culture. I think you have to understand in its totality, not just military history or political history, but
It all comes together.
It all comes together.
We agree.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great explanation. Sandy, take us back to the time of your club presidency. I mean, obviously you were one of the youngest club presidents at times, and how you worked your leadership. You started in the youth program. I mean, you grew up in the club. Then you went off to the University of Florida, go Gators, and you came back. Take it from there. Talk about your presidency.
So when I came back from college, I wanted to get involved in more so than just the youth club, and that's great and have fun and go on trips and stuff. So I was actually asked by the president, incoming president, if I would become a recording secretary. And back then, computers were new. So one of the first things I did, which was, people laugh today, which blew them away, is I would keep the notes on a computer, print them out on a laser printer, and bring them out for the next meeting or board meeting, and they were shocked. They were printed, not written, handwritten, where they couldn't read it. And that was, so I actually served 2 years as recording secretary, 1 year as vice president, and then 1 year as president. And one of the reasons I wanted to get in, because at that time, which was 30 years ago, we were a minority, meaning anyone under 30, 25, 30 was a rare minority.
How old were you at the time? Tell me.
30 years ago, I was 34 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was 34 years old. And the average age, the president was in his late 70s. They were all above 60 at least.
So the demographics were much older.
It was totally different. So we were, right now I look at it as, sometimes the president gets frustrated with the minority camp, the elders who maybe raise objections.
Of course.
We were the minority, they were the majority. So if we raised our voice too loud, it was maybe 10 of us. And the rest of them were still my grandfathers, my fathers, my uncles. They were still that generation that pretty much controlled it. So it was a challenge. It was definitely a challenge. But it was something I figured, let me get involved in this. Maybe we can steer things a bit different. Didn't always work that way. And the majority of the time it didn't. It was you were overruled. And I understood the perspective. So again, and I think it goes back to understanding your culture and your history. When you understand where they came from,
yes, and
what they were involved in, and maybe even the political structure of where they came from, right?
Yes.
They didn't have democracy and elections and, the vote, everybody gets his vote. It wasn't that. Yeah. It was persuasion. There were camps you had to address every time. Mm-hmm. So we had voting blocks to deal with. So we would spend the majority of our time, if you wanted to pass something, you would have to spend the weeks before bringing it up to discuss with each family camp, in a sense. Hey, we're going to bring this up. For instance, we're going to pass, there's a no smoking rule in the meeting. During the meeting, there's no smoking. Well, that failed miserably because the majority of the people had been smoking practically all their lives. And so they said, fine, we'll pass it and you enforce it. So it passed. And one of the stories was, they said, okay, now go tell those people. Well, the majority of the people playing cards were at least 65, 70, 75 years old. And they were either my great uncles or cousins. There's no way I was going to, it was just unheard of. It was, hey, to go up there and say,
of course,
please put out your cigarette. I tried it a few times and they walked out. And we lost a few members who said, until you change this, we're not going to. So it was a challenge.
Yeah.
Today, I look at it sometimes with someone raising their hand and saying you shouldn't spend so much, and then it gets passed anyway, and they're, you took their input. Back then, it was totally different.
Yeah. And back then, the dynamics were different as far as ladies and men. It was the Ramallah Men's Club, Ladies Auxiliary.
Right.
So even the men and women weren't meeting together.
That's true.
So that made the dynamics even more different.
That's
correct?
True. The ladies used to knock on the door. They would come in, the president, and announce, we're going to give $1,000 to the men, or we're going to plan on this. Is this date okay? In fact, one of the things, which was the last time, was when I was president. That's the last year we had a men and ladies club. After that year, we combined it.
Yeah.
So I felt that was good to get the ladies' input because, they would meet separately. They would have their own agenda, no calendar. And it caused a bit of a coordination problem. We also had a young lady who's in Detroit now, but she was the club president, ladies club president. And we spent most of our weeks trying to coordinate. Well, we passed this. What did you pass? And coordinate it. So it was a challenge, but we abolished that. We combined it. It went over fairly well. I'll say it that way because the men had to behave in the meetings. But the first few meetings the following year were a bit difficult in terms of who spoke and who got up and spoke and what the issues were.
Yeah. When did smoking finally get eliminated? Because that's been a while.
Probably to be heavily enforced. We bought, first they forced us to buy a filter to use the filter.
Yeah.
And then we said, well, to change the filter, it would cost X amount of dollars every quarter. And they said, we're not going to approve that. So why do we have this device that we installed up?
Yes.
So that went away. But there were a lot of issues, whether it was discussing donations to the Federation or outside people used to come in and ask for donations. Again, if you think in the mentality of where they came from in that generation and putting yourself in their position,
yes,
they didn't go through what we go through now as the young generation. We're on committees and boards outside and we see how things work. They weren't used to that at all.
Yeah, it's completely understandable is what you're saying.
Yeah,
like looking in perspective now and being more than likely their age now.
Absolutely, yeah.
And looking back going, I get where they're coming from.
Exactly. So that's why, now when those hands go up, I look at them, some of the ones who objected to some of the stuff. I always looked at it as a learning experience because when you sat down with them afterwards and asked them what's your real objection,
a
lot of times they just wanted to be heard.
Yes.
The majority of them just want their voice to be heard and don't want to feel that that their generation is being passed. The young generation is not getting their input. And that's the way I always viewed it. Let them have their say. Let them feel like you took into consideration. Tell them you're going back to the board meeting to discuss it. Table it. A lot of times my objective was to go in with something hot, knowing I would table it to let them feel that we were going to go back and discuss it. Did we? No. But it made them feel that we took their input and they would come back and say, this was great. I'm glad you listened to me, even though we voted against the person or the group.
Yeah. Came down to respect.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Really?
Exactly. Very well said.
Yeah.
We have a lot of younger board members now in the club. Is there any advice you would have for them?
Yeah, I would say listen and learn. We're fortunate that it was a great event last night for the installation. And I looked at the young and I actually came back and told Shireen, I said, the best thing they can do is, and I know it's hard because a lot of these people are probably their grandfather's age, some of the older generation, but reach out to them, listen. And when they have an objection, go up and talk to them. It would mean the world to those people. To me, if I raised my hand, I'm I don't consider myself their age yet, but just listening to my input and, saying, well, my experience was when we did this, here's the reasoning behind it. Give them that respect because at the end of the day, they're the ones who built the club.
Amen.
They started it.
Amen.
Yes.
And no one likes to feel, look, we did this, we're past. Yeah, they're proud of the new generation taking over, but they don't want to lose that input.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Very nice.
Yeah. Sandy, were there moments when you felt the weight of the responsibility?
Yeah. So having to tackle that, the older generation was a constant battle. So it was hard. We passed two things during my term with the expansion of the Ramallah Club.
When you talk about the expansion, visually tell us.
So there used to be an old stage in the back.
Okay, so the stage was in the back, not to the side when you
Right.
walked in, because we know the stage is gone now, but very back. You go into the main lobby, stage was in the very back.
Right.
Okay.
We knocked it down
Okay.
and went further.
Okay.
So we expanded out.
Yes.
That was a major deal to get pushed. Now, we didn't do it back then to say we're doing it for rentals. That wasn't the big issue. We were growing as a community,
Yes.
and people wanted to do our picnics and all that. So we expanded it for that reason. That was a major deal to get that accomplished. And we also did the 40th anniversary during my year of the Ramallah Club. and we actually did an ad book. So we wanted to use it to raise money. And we raised, I believe, over $16,000 at that time, which was a lot.
That was huge. At that time?
At that time. And we had the entire community. It was a nice ad book we put together, raised a lot of money to help pay for that. But those were difficult obstacles to get past some of the older generation. But again, if you hear them out, listen to their concerns. Are you going to address our card room? Because the card room in those days was no bigger than half the bathroom now. If people remember the card room.
In the front?
In the front.
Yes.
With a little window there.
Yeah.
It was small.
Yeah.
So as long as you address their concerns, because again, they built it.
Yeah.
It's,
Looking back, is there anything you wish you would have done differently? Or something that you started that you would have liked to have seen to continue, but, it was a 1-year term and, you had to just kind of put it to rest?
Probably to get more, at that time, more young adults involved. When I served there, and I tried to reach out to the others, but at that time, having the majority of them being the older folks, it was difficult to get the other ones because they felt they had no voice. So fine, you're president, you're young, you can represent us, but you can't do anything without getting this stuff approved. So that was difficult at that stage. We had a few, but it was hard. That was very hard. And, it comes with time because after me, I guess it was years later, then we started to get some other young presidents and the population started to change. But just getting more youth and getting them to really to not look at it as it's a bunch of old people playing cards and we only show up there for picnics, but get something that's going to attract them. And I know we say this every year.
Yeah.
Get activities as they're doing now.
Yes.
Put investment in basketball courts or whatever. The stuff you've managed to do in this past year, Alex, has been tremendous. I say this to Shireen.
Yeah. Yes.
Twice a week.
Yeah.
Oh my God, look at this activity. This is great. We're going to do casino night. We're doing this. We're doing this. We're doing this. And it's drawing out the people.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the people get installed last night. I'm looking at these young kids I hadn't seen in a while. I didn't think would ever participate in club activities. And it's like, wow, look at them. They're excited. They want to get involved. But again, I caution them to say, but give that older community. I guess that would be us now.
Yes.
Give us a chance to give that, reference point.
Yes. Great.
Thank you for the kind words. Team effort, though, as you know. What does the future of the club look like for you? Is there anything you'd like to evolve and change? And is there anything you'd like to keep the same?
Yeah. I look at it from two aspects. We have the cultural activities, and those are fantastic, where we're bringing in speakers and we're bringing in lecturers and concerts and musicians and things like that. To me, I would like to make sure our own people, and especially the young generation, really understand what's going on and understand the culture. It's not just hafla and dances and things like that. Those are fun. Picnics, they come in, they see their cousins, but maybe take the effort to, educate them and remind them of, I don't know how many of them really understand how old the club is or what their parents or grandparents participated or contributed to the club. How many of them know that their grandparents were a former president? But getting them to understand more than the topic of the day. So, we look at what's happening overseas and we see what's happening, and it gets people excited for a while and then it trails off. People lose interest in the club and they come back, and you see these generational shifts. You see some families are involved, some aren't. Some become involved when their relatives are involved.
Become officers or leaders. Yes.
And it's funny because we purposely in the old days would position ourselves.
Yes.
To say, well, how are we going to grow the membership? And we would say, Mandat so-and-so, this one from this family, this and this family, purposely to bring them in because they would. And that to me, that culture, that's old school.
Yeah. Strategy.
And it's the mentality of the older generation that says, and you still hear it today, we have to go to so-and-so because he's involved and he's president. And Abe, if we don't show up to support him, you still hear that from 2 generations down.
Yeah.
So strategically use that wisely. Yeah. Let's leverage that if we have to, if that's what's going to bring them in. But make sure they understand the history and what's going on in the club and really what, how it came about. Not just the club, but the really our situation as Palestinian Americans from Ramallah, and how the situation is and how we play into it and how we can affect it and how we can help as being Americans of Palestinian descent, Ramallah descent in our community. So, one of the things we talked about before I started is when I worked at the city of Jacksonville, when I was appointed by the mayors, one of the first things I wanted to do is have speaker groups and bring these people to speakers. And we used to have actual groups where we would get together. I remember at Red Lobster on Arlington Expressway, and we would bring speakers and have a small group, and I can still name all the people who would show up, just 10, 15 of us, and we would bring the director of purchasing from the city. We would bring the director of parks and recreation from the city, and I used to call them and say, would you like to speak to our group about whatever, just to get involved. And back then, the only people at the city there were 3 of us who were at the city at the time. And we got actively involved to bring the mayors to speak. I mean, now it's common, the mayor shows up. Back then it was difficult because they didn't know what the Ramallah Club was. They knew us as sandwich shop owners, right? Ran restaurants in town. The community hadn't exceeded where we are today. I mean, we had certain people in the legal practice and stuff, but not to where it is today. So it was an accomplishment to bring them to speak to us and then see how we can influence their decisions and let them think of us when they're thinking of top charities or who they want to mention. We used to do the Thanksgiving food giveaway, the Thanksgiving dinner for senior citizens. We used to bus over 500 to 800 senior citizens to our club to feed them for a Thanksgiving dinner.
Mm-hmm. The day before Thanksgiving.
Yep. And we did that in coordination with the city departments.
Correct.
To bring them in and give them bags of fruit to take home with them to the senior citizens' homes. That was the biggest event covered with the Ramallah Club, with the local news stations.
Yes.
The newspapers covered it. They enjoyed that, look forward to it every single year. And it was real simple. We just got in touch with community affairs at the city. Mm-hmm. And helped coordinate it. They provided the buses, they bused them in. Yeah. We fed them.
Yeah, Alex, just to kind of give you a background, I mean, there was, I'm about to help coordinate that. There was several, my dad, your dad, every family member was actively involved in this. And they did it before the day of Thanksgiving. And it was every youth helped in it because everyone that was away at college came in to help serve. And every kid in town helped serve because it was the day before Thanksgiving and they were off from school. Yes. So it was a perfect way to use every youth and every person in town. So the manpower was at the club.
That's incredible.
And busing was easy because the city coordinated it. It was all at the club. And it was just the signature event of our club for years.
That's incredible. How long did this go until?
Oh my gosh, Sandy, you've got to answer that question because, it was a big part of our childhood. For a long time. Yeah. During the Austin administration.
Absolutely.
Sam Musa was actively involved in it.
It went through partial Delaney administration.
Yes.
So it's probably a good 4 and he did 8, probably 8 to 10 years.
Yes. I think the transportation issue was how it kind of got stalled is what happened, is that the city was not able to arrange the transportation for these seniors to come to the club. And that's when things went kaboom. I believe.
But that put us on the map in terms of people recognizing what the club does and contributes.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. And it was tables and tables and tables and tables of rows and rows and rows and rows of seniors. And honestly, every single person at the club, every member came and volunteered because the ladies and men were in the kitchen and the youth were on the floor. And literally everybody had a job. I still have photos from it.
Wow. Yeah. Sounds like we need to bring something back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
amazing.
That really put our name on the map and showed we're giving back to the community. I mean, it's one thing to give dollars, but to show that you care for them and do you see the satisfaction in their faces when you give them a bag of fresh
to hand them food? Exactly.
Yeah, there was a lot involved. Yeah, and I know that. And speaking of that, I know that Nether and Melissa and a lot of people tried to bring it back, but the issue was the transportation. Because I tried to make some phone calls to different centers for them because that was really something that they wanted to do. They ended up doing a food drive because it was much easier, to have it, distribute. Bags of food for the needy. So we did that for a while, but that was the big issue was transportation.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Which now makes sense.
Yeah.
Trying to do that through the city.
Yeah.
But it was a signature event, something that was very big part of our childhood.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Sandy, shifting. Before we go to the next question, we talked a lot about your job prior to recording, and we had a kind of funny question. Sandy says, you've had different shifts in career, and there's a lot of funny questions about what you do and what people think you do. Why don't you clear the air and tell people what you do?
Well,
you're not retired, number one.
Not retired.
You don't work for the city.
I don't work for the city. I work for Microsoft.
Okay.
After I came from the University of Florida, my brother and I joined my brother who had an Apple computer dealership here on the University Boulevard North. That was for around 8 years. After that, I joined the city of Jacksonville in their information technology division during Mayor Hazuri's time to, back then, again, modernize city computers because, again, computers were new back then for the IBM. And so I was brought into the city of Jacksonville, and I stayed there 13 years. Shortly after I joined, I was appointed the youngest CIO of the city of Jacksonville by Mayor Delaney. I served actually under Mayor Hazuri and Mayor Austin, appointed by Delaney, and then appointed by Mayor Payton. So I was there 13 years. Then I left there. I worked for ID Integration, which was a sub-company of MPS Group, Modus. Stayed there about 10 years, building their national Microsoft practice. And then I joined Microsoft. So I've been with Microsoft about 5.5 years and cover a lot of accounts within the U.S. So I'm still here and still alive and still.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Thank you for sharing that. All right. Next question. On a personal note, you're married to the amazing Shireen. Congratulations. Is she going to make an appearance by chance?
We shall see.
I think
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Shireen.
Hi.
Thanks for making an appearance.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to pose your question since you're on the mic. Tell us how long you and Sandy have been married.
Oh, in April, it will be 39 years.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank
Congratulations.
you.
So who wants to answer the question on how you met? Okay, they're looking at each other.
They're pointing at each other.
They're pointing at, okay.
Sandy and I met. He was, as he said before, playing the tabla at certain weddings. And it was actually at Shirley and Elias Kishik's wedding. I'm invited because I'm part of Darmusa, Shirley's Darmusa.
All right.
So I was there, and Sandy was the hired.
You were part of the band?
I was shahil, as they say. So I didn't get a served meal. We were help.
It was the hired help. So I was, I guess during intermission, Sam Khalil actually got Sandy, and he goes, "Hey, I got a girl for you."
Okay.
And so Sam came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to introduce you to Sandy." And then we met there, and
yeah, I think we were, it was coming to the end of the break, our music break.
Yeah.
And Sam said, "Hey, go see Shireen. Why don't you go introduce yourself?" And I said, "I know her brother. I know Eileen, of course."
Yes, of course.
And I knew her brother from the club, always coming to play ping pong. So I went over there, and I think it was a 30-second conversation. And then they said, "Come back," and we had to start the set over again. So we started playing. And then I think I talked to you again at the next break.
At the next intermission.
Intermission, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we started dating a few weeks after that.
A few weeks after that, and then we got engaged, and the following year we got married in 1987.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You have 3 children and
3 grandchildren.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
God bless you both.
Brand new little one, only 3 months old.
Yeah.
And when are you, and I'm assuming another trip to Texas soon?
Always.
Yes.
Always.
Yes. Always. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Now, you and the family have been to Ramallah. Could you tell us about that experience and how it felt walking the same streets as your parents and grandparents?
Yeah, I went to Ramallah originally in the early 70s with my mom and dad. And Ramallah in the early 70s was totally different from, of course, now. I mean, everybody says each year it's changed. And then I went back a second time. And then I went to, I was supposed to go third, but I ended up staying in Amman. And when we went with the whole family, my mom wanted to take us. My dad had passed away. He had gone on a previous trip, which my family couldn't go on. I went, where we went to Egypt and Jordan. But this time my mom wanted to actually take the entire family. So we went. And, seeing things that I saw and my kids have always heard about in terms of,
Sure.
Here's the house. We used to walk to school and we walked 25 miles to do this and up
In the
hills and
snow, in the rain.
snow.
Yeah. Yes.
That was we say today, and we actually produced a book on it ourselves. We self-produced a book with all the photos and things like that. Our trip to Ramallah. It was absolutely amazing to be able to finally get them to understand and see how the families grew up, especially looking at the old Ramallah, the old city of Ramallah,
Sure.
and putting things in perspective. Now it's, of course, from their eyes, they see it and there's modern restaurants and things like that. But taking them back in the old sections and how they grew up was amazing for them. They deeply appreciated it. It was, and I get chills walking through some of those streets and hearing some of the stories, because my mom took us literally to every spot, her old school, her old home. Here's where Farhat lived. Here's where I grew up to do this. Here's where we did this. So it was really put things in perspective.
What a beautiful special trip that must have been. That's amazing. Sandy, earlier you spoke of your father, Isa, memory eternal, a wonderful man.
Thank you.
And your dear mother, who is now 89.
Yes.
That's so amazing. God bless her. Auntie Abla is a true matriarch of our community. What was the one value that you think they taught you that you've tried to pass along to your children and now to your grandchildren? And obviously, if you need to mention more than one value, that's okay too.
Yeah, I think both of them heavily concentrate on respect.
Yeah.
Show everybody respect, you'll get respect back. You disrespect somebody, you're going to get it. Don't be surprised when that happens. My dad had a statement he always used. You could come home and say, "Hey, I just saw so and so, and it didn't go well, or whatever. They said something wrong." And he would always say, "Label and table, just label and table."
Mm.
And what he meant is, and it's obvious, but
Yes.
just you label what the person's about or for, table it, move on, and take what people say with a grain of salt. Have patience,
Of course.
listen to it, and just move on. If it's something you don't agree with, just move on. It's not worth fighting over.
Yes. He had such a soft temperament. You know what I mean? Isa seemed to be so just soft-spoken, kind, very.
He was. He was even-tempered.
Yeah.
Just let things roll off. If they don't, somebody says something, just it doesn't matter. My mom was the same way. Show the level of respect. Honor that respect with people. Don't, have the attitude of, if they are older, show them the respect, even if you don't agree with them. Just, it'll pay back.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is probably reputation. Nothing is more important than your reputation at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You don't want to tarnish that. That'll come back to haunt you. You get known for it, especially in our community.
Yeah.
People remember things for 100 years. Somebody makes a mistake or says something, it gets passed down to generations about these events. It's unfortunate. So respect and watch your reputation.
Sure. Yeah. Good words. Sandy, what gives you hope about the next generation?
One thing that encourages me is, and I'm a straight shooter, I say it the way I mean it. I don't shy away from anything. I get cautioned a lot of times. And it's not that I didn't heed the advice of my father to say label and table and, show respect, but I call it the way it is.
Yes.
And seeing this generation and people like Alex come up and the young get involved, want to get involved. They're not being forced. Their parents are not saying, okay, push him, let's get this in. You should go do this. They are falling over themselves. I was in a discussion with someone from Houston this morning. And it's funny. We were going through and saying this, we're doing this podcast. And the question was, how long does your president serve? And he asked me, how long did you serve? And I said, a year. And they were shocked. So one of our presidents served 8 years. And the other person said, it's because no one will take it. And I said, guys, we have people dying we have competition. Back when I was president, you pretty much, if you had the rare occasion, rare, if somebody said, I want to be president, you had two, you would speak to one of them and say, it's not your time. Please step down. And there was never an occasion when I was involved in the club up until I was president, probably for 10 years after, where we had elections where it was competitive. I said, now this generation, they want to get involved. They want to become members. They want to follow, because I always advise, be a board member 2 years, at least 2 years, 2 or 3 years, be an officer, then be a vice president, then be president. It can't always work that way. I get it, long terms, or be involved in the youth club and understand, because I think that's amazing now when you look at the youth club and what they're involved in, not just trips to Disney or they go to Universal, but the stuff they accomplish. It just gives me, I know, just seeing it yesterday and seeing all the people march through and seeing the activities that Alex put together in this last year was amazing. I'm fortunate to be involved in a lot of outside organizations and technology and go to conferences, and been doing that for 40 years. And that's what it reminds me of. Seeing these types of activities are what you see, and I don't want to say on the outside, but outside of our community, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
These events are going on and conventions and things like that. And seeing it with us, it's like, this is great. And they're full houses, they're young, they're old. Everybody participates and everyone looks forward to it.
That's great. Yeah.
Thank you. In closing, we want to thank you for being our guest and for sharing your story, and also for your hospitality and kindness as well. We always ask everyone to sign up with some words of wisdom.
Yeah, with me, it's pretty easy. I say this, and I know it's been quoted a million times, but I kind of paraphrase it. I don't want to sit here and quote Khalil Gibran, and this is exactly what he said. But if you don't understand history, you're bound to repeat some of the same mistakes you make. And if you don't understand or deny your heritage, you have no heritage. And if you don't understand your heritage fully, and I say this with closing, depending on how you look at situations, in our situation, if you consider them your opponents, adversaries, friends, whatever, from other communities that you may interact with or have a conflict with, you can bet that they understand theirs. So it only behooves us to make sure we double down to understand and appreciate our heritage, where we came from, how we play in the bigger community, not just in the US where we think, but think globally. Because if you're going to participate in some of these activities that are global, not just something that's local, then you need to understand the situation and make sure you stay on top of it. Because the people across from you who are doing the same thing, maybe against you or as opposition to you, understand it.
Very well said.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Hear Our Story, a podcast dedicated to first-generation Palestinian Americans. Special thanks to the Ramallah American Club of Jacksonville and to the production team of Joy Bateh Farhat, Alex Elias, Janice Farhat, and Chris Varmond. Hear Our Story can be found on all podcast platforms. We look forward to bringing you our next story.